Hello, hello, hello. I am Dr. Andrea Greiner.
And I'm Katie Corbin.
Welcome to the Dreams to Dollars podcast, a podcast for entrepreneurs and professionals who are on their way to actualizing their dreams into reality.
Join us in this lighthearted and unique podcast where we talk about business, success, life, and building a deeper trust in God and the universe.
We are here to elevate the conversation and bring the magic to build your legacy.
We're excited for you to be here. Can't wait to dive in.
Hello! Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We are so excited to connect with you here. And we just want to shout out to all of our listeners, wherever you are in the world. And it's building and building. So Dreams to Dollars is really for those inspirational folks wanting to create more, having big dreams, knowing that they can actualize creating more within your businesses and your lives and we have families. So we always integrate that into our conversations. So you might be doing the dishes, you might be exercising, you might be out for a walk, you might just be like, what the hell is happening? And you're like, I'm going to go chat with Katie and Andrea. That's really what we want for, we envision you guys in all those different aspects, right? And none of it's right or wrong. So wherever you are, welcome. And we're so grateful you're here. And I wanted to read one of our reviews that somebody wrote and just do a little shout out to Allison Buckland. So she just recently wrote, "What a great podcast. Katie and Andrea are super relatable and credible. They inspire action and give solid tips along with their own personal stories, which serve to connect with a wide range of listeners on their path." So thank you, Allison. That really sums us up in a nutshell. We want to share what we've experienced in our life, in our businesses, and I just love leaving somewhere and having like a quick, easy tip or tool or a new perspective, a new way to think, or like, wow, I hadn't realized I have some healing to do on that topic. And today's topic, ooh, it's super juicy. So it's the good and bad and ugly on collaborations, right? So Katie and I have been in collaboration together for 3 years, 3 years now.
Yeah, almost
2021.
Yeah.
Almost 4. And let me tell you, no, I can't even be mean because I freaking love Katie. I was going to be like sassy and like, there was a time where I wanted to hurt her. I have never wanted to hurt Katie, but
we battled.
we battled with our, well, actually, this is funny. So here we are 3 years later. We've actually never met in person yet.
Right.
Which is super ironic.
Mm-hmm.
We should have done more statistics, but we have created many programs together, probably at least 5 to 8, and created multiple, 6 figures together in our collaboration. This podcast is obviously a collaboration. We have some other programs that are coming down the line. So we wanted to talk about the things that no one talks about, right? Like, this is really what Katie and I love. We're like, ooh, nobody really talks about that. And you might be wondering, like, how do you collaborate? What are the benefits? How do you stay with somebody for, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, 20 years, however that looks. So Katie, I know we're going to be like, because we have like, it's an exciting topic for us because I feel like I would say we're successful in our collaboration. And actually, I have to tell my husband sometimes if someone's texting me and it's like, bzz, bzz, I'm like, it's Katie. Hang on. We're on a topic and we're on a roll. So it's pretty funny because at this point our husbands are like, I'm like, hang on, I got to answer Katie and then I'll get right back to you. So that's where we are. And like Katie will talk about, it's just really fun. So we wish that for more and more people. And in order to get there, you have to talk about the bad and the ugly and the shadowy stuff, because gosh, again, we didn't do any statistical research before this, but it would be interesting to know how many partnerships fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And probably quite a lot.
Topic.
Right.
A lot.
I would imagine quite a few too. And I think the biggest thing let's start with like the good, we'll start at the good place. Yeah. So what are the benefits of collaboration? Now, the benefits are ultimately endless. Like they really are, depending on who you
Yeah.
collaborate with and your intent behind the collaboration. And it often doesn't even mean we're not talking about like forming a business partnership and having this like sometimes only like legal structure. And that's the only way you collaborate. Like you're probably already collaborating right now, going on a guest of a podcast, being on summits is collaboration, trading referrals is collaboration, doing a joint podcast is collaboration. It doesn't only have to look like this business entity where you both get part of the business shares and you have this board of directors and all these things. It can be really right what you want it to be. So what is your intent of collaboration? Why are you even doing it? Because I find that some people say, well, I want to collaborate. Well, what does that mean? What is that for you? And what is your intention of actually collaborating? And one thing I would say, like for the energy of collaboration, you really have to go into it with, I would say, number one, open communication, because that really matters. Because how many of us can't, first of all, like maybe can't fully communicate what's happening in, maybe a conflict or what's going on. But if you have open communication and you're able to be like, hey, I'm having a bad day. And the other person's like, woo, I'm glad you told me that because it makes it easier on me. I'm not like making stuff up in my head and making assumptions that you hate me or something bad is going to happen. Like it's like open communication. I know it sounds so simple, but I feel like most people have a form of closed communication. And if you go into a collaboration where there's more open communication, I would say it's probably going to be more successful in general.
Yeah. And that's really where we started.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about the good. We'll share our journey, as, almost 4-year collaboration that's something Katie really brought up. And let me tell you, collaborating isn't easy at whatever thing you're doing. Obviously, if you're like, let's do this long term, because it's like a relationship. It will bring up your shit. Like
Yeah.
it will. The more you can have that open conversation, that was something Katie said, like, okay, like no matter what, we have to be really open with each other. And at first it was sort of like, oh my God, like you're going to find out that I'm, whatever we think ourselves, right? You're going to know
Yeah.
I'm a total mess on the inside or,
Yeah.
like whatever we decide, like, oh shit, because we each have our different, superpowers. Katie has different superpowers than I do, and I really appreciated that Katie brought that forward because I would say at the beginning, we had, and I wouldn't even say problems. We just had more bumps. We had more things came up because we weren't used to that. I mean, it's like we weren't, we're not dating or having sex, but we're creating a relationship that is like, oh, that's rough.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah.
And it's like we were neither, both of us were willing to be in it. So we weren't like, I'm gonna run away. Because
Yeah.
I think also I would say our vision really was aligned and it still is. Like it hasn't fully actualized. And that is also like a testament to dreams to dollars, right? You can have a dream. And every time Katie and I create a program together, it brings us closer to that, but it hasn't quite landed. And so we're in this journey of like, oh, well, that was cool. It wasn't quite, and I don't think there's a quite it, but Katie and I really, we have this depth of information we want to bring forward, and it's come through in many different ways. It's so dynamic that we never, I would say, that open communication. We also we had that vision together that we were very clear on. So we actually even paid for some branding so that we knew what our vision was with our collaboration. And that really helped. We look back at that most years and we're like, is this still true for us? Wouldn't you agree with like, that kind of brings you through the bumpy stuff. You can do this. We've done this in our individual businesses. Like, what's the vision? Is that still true for us? And do we want to still continue on that path?
Yeah. And it's sort of reassessing sometimes too, like looking back and going, yes, it's still true. We're still on that path. I almost visualize when you started to say that, Andrea, like collaboration, right? To some degree, depending on how long the destination of collaboration is, however you decide, maybe there's short collaborations and maybe there's a lifetime. We don't know. But it's almost like if you expect a plane, right, to take off and you're going to a destination and you expect no turbulence from the plane and the turbulence comes and you're like, we're going down, and you're like, No, we don't want that. We're like, we're going to hit bumpy roads. There's going to be things we have to openly talk about. And I feel like if you expect it to be this just, smooth, always smooth sailing, I would say ours is pretty smooth sailing. It's not like we have this, like, we didn't drop out
Yeah.
of the sky or something, but it's like that. Just keeping open communication is going to help you both understand if you want to continue to move forward with the collaboration.
Yeah. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about like we never fell out of the sky, but sure we had launches that nobody bought from.
Yeah.
Or we had things that we showed up and we were so stoked and we are like, oh, this is so aligned. And like one person came and we'd
Yeah.
be like, what the hell? But actually, and what I appreciated about those was having someone else and being like, well, Katie, like, what was your take on that? How did that feel for you? And we'd be like, grr, like
Yeah.
that sucked, or, like,
Yeah.
I'm disappointed. I'm bummed. I really thought that that felt aligned. I thought we'd have 20 people in it, and so that vulnerability with each other, that willingness, which is, I guess like another word for open, but really, I think being willing to be vulnerable, which is true again with your dreams, vulnerable with your dreams, and also patient that it can happen in our brains. We're like, well, why isn't it here right now? We're like lottery, right? Why isn't it here right now? Where is it right now? But that vulnerability, that patience, that open communication, the willingness to look at the wounds that come up. So I'll share mine, and I would love to hear Katie's. So for me, collaborating will often bump up against like my abandonment wound. So and then also as you were talking, I was thinking of like, okay, well, where did we have the turbulence? It would be like, I wanted to make sure that I showed up 100%. So if Katie needed something and I couldn't fulfill that need almost instantly, I'd like, well, Katie had expressed, I would maybe get defensive, or I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm trying harder. Or like, I'd be like, I'm trying to get there, but I can't because I have 3 kids and I'm losing my mind or whatever. She'd be
Yeah.
like, it's cool. Like I had an urgency, and that was from this need to make sure that whoever I was with, I am
Yeah.
willing to give that 100%. Now, the other
Yeah.
one is a bit deeper, shadowy stuff of abandonment. And I would say with Katie and I know how she shows up is so present that it didn't really trigger it, but it's been triggered in other collaborations where someone's like, okay, peace out. And I'm like, what? I thought we had this like whole thing we were
Hmm.
talking about, right? So those are two big ones. What would you say your two kind of brush up against stuff that shows up?
I would say mine tend to be more like betrayal. So, like, who's gonna come and get me, right? Like, and a lot of people
Oh
have
yeah,
this
that's a good
actually.
one. That's a
Quite a
good one.
few people have betrayal wounds, and it's not even sometimes like it's not even like something that maybe you experience in this lifetime. It could be almost like this generational thing that's kind of coming through your genetic lineage too as well. Like I don't know, I wasn't totally betrayed in my lifetime, but you expect like somebody to like bail or something bad to happen or somebody to be actually sort of like skeeving beneath the surface. And the thing is there
Yeah.
are people like that. There are
Yeah.
people where they
It
go
does
into
happen.
corporations. This is kind of the ugly. We're gonna add the ugly into here.
Yeah.
Where they're not trustworthy and they're not
Yeah.
open and they're lying and they, take over a partnership and they steal the partnership underneath the other person. I've seen that happen to people. But I do find that it's not like you always see it, but like with you, Andrea, obviously, like I didn't feel that. I didn't feel it. Maybe it would bump up, like, okay, maybe something's happening, but it wasn't like just like you said, it wasn't like, it's me ultimately. And this is what I want to also say with these like sort of wounds. If you're willing to reflect and look at yourself, you're not going to project as much. We're still human. Don't get me wrong. Some days we have
Yeah.
like I'm overstimulated and I'm sorry. And, like we can say sorry, like
I'm
it's
feeling defensive, but my life feels crazy or whatever,
right.
like,
And,
yeah.
and then you go, okay, like you can drop your guard because they're not
Yeah.
projecting anymore. But if you're in that space of like unconscious and you're projecting and you're saying, Andrea, Katie, you abandoned me. And you're like, wait a sec, I didn't abandon you. Right. So there's like, we actually
Yeah.
can drop that defense and going, hey, we come to the table like as we are. And we know that if we can keep open communication, and even if it's like, hey, Andrea, I'm having a bad day, I'm going to peace out for a day, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. Like, let's talk about it next week, So it's like we can come to the table and be open and honest with each other. And I just think that open and honesty tends to collaborate better because you're
Yeah.
not having to defend yourself against the other person's stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I would say, I mean that, but like this idea that someone's going to screw you over.
Right. Yes.
And how many people, like this is what like we talked about this right before we went live, like how many people have joined groups that have been manipulated, that have been, screwed over. So then you're like you're not tainted, but the experience is tainted
Disappointed.
to do it again. Yeah,
Yes.
you're worried, is that going to happen again? And then you might not step into a collaboration that would be so different. So I'll share a story here. Right before Katie and I collaborated, I had spent almost a year, at least 8 months,
Oh,
like a
yeah.
full pregnancy, nine
I
months,
remember this.
working on this summit, like weekly calls. I think I was just like, and this whole vision, we're going to make millions of dollars. So of course, the focus was not necessarily genuine of like how and what and the marketing and the finances to put into a big summit that would actually generate $1 million. I
Yeah.
was newer. It's like 2020-ish, and so it gets to the event and I think 5 people have enrolled and like the whole fucking thing just disintegrates.
Yeah.
Like it was like it just fell apart. And I was like, you
So
know,
much work
and I
down the
wasn't mad.
drain.
I mean, I think I took it in stride, and then here Katie comes like a month later, and I was like, and we had talked about a summit when we first were like, let's do a summit, let's do something, let's do, and I was like, I don't know, man. I was just like, shit, and I
I'm
had
burnt from
invested.
summits. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know about a summit, but I totally want to collaborate. And it's funny because I look back and I'm not mad about it. I learned so much. It was a very tender time. I think I was pregnant for parts of it. So,
You
like,
were pregnant, I think.
yeah, I was pregnant. Yeah, yeah, I was pregnant. And so, it was, I think it's just really like being willing to have those collaborations that fall apart. And like, I learned a ton.
Yeah.
And now I see some of those people that I'm still connected with and I'm cheering them on. And it's just like we all learned and we didn't die.
Yes.
That's a big thing I'm like, it's gonna be hard. Am I gonna die? No. Okay, I can do it, now I
Hmm.
have more questions to ask about a collaboration and
Yeah.
energetic, tools to even like assess, okay, is this gonna create more for me, more for us, more impact, whatever, whatever we're really there for. So that was like it was fascinating to have this whole big, literally a lot of time every week, 1 to 2 hours creating something. It fell apart. And then here came Katie. Now I could have said, no, Katie, I'm totally burned
Yeah.
and I'm never going to do that again. But I didn't make a vow like that. And I was like, yeah, let's talk. And
Let's
I
do
had those, like,
this.
I was a little weary. I was weary for a bit just because I was worried about how much time I had, and I didn't necessarily have consistent childcare and that kind of stuff. And I would say we've all been burned at this point
Yeah.
in life. We have likely all been burned. And if you're willing to look at that and say, yeah, I have been burned. And for this, I'm willing to look at it and give it a go. If it's right,
Yeah.
aligned, right? I ask, maybe I would just say, like, I'll ask, is this going to benefit me and my business? Is this going to create more, impact with my vision? Are we together going to be aligned, and you can ask some kind of energetic questions. I'd be curious what you kind of ask, because I know you also get some really funky emails of people wanting to like you to share their stuff and stuff. So
Hmm.
what do you kind of ask to give it a little a check in?
Yeah, so I've also been burned in collaborations, and I don't even say burned because it was sort of a mutual thing, but it just didn't work in the way it's sort of like a relationship. Like this is not working for me. This is not going to work out. You have to sort of dissolve the collaboration because for some reason there's something there that's not working for anymore. So I always tend to weigh the opportunity with the opportunity cost involved. So if the opportunity is presenting itself and it seems like sometimes you can tell if the opportunity is like people just try to take things from you. So it's like, here, I have this great
Yeah.
opportunity, but do this, and this for me. And it's an opportunity for you, though. And it's like, that's not an opportunity for me. That's a cost to me. And they may be seeing an opportunity, of course, right? Especially if you're established and they're looking for you to do something for them. You can sort of feel the vibe of a person where they think it's an opportunity, but it's going to actually cost you more. So I tend to go like strategically, and I say, I have that strategic mind, and Andrea knows this about me too as well, where I start to weigh the opportunity presented for me, and then what are the costs involved for me, whether it's time, money, or energy. And then the opportunity has to outweigh the cost. So, and it's got to outweigh even like the emotional costs, because I'm not going to get into an opportunity that I don't also value or vibe with. Even if it's a great opportunity, if I feel a weird vibe from the other person and it's like something's off here, something's unspoken, something's hidden, and my inner, like spider sense comes in and it's like, something is strange. There's something hidden. Somebody's not saying something. And then oftentimes I'll just, say no to the collaboration. You can also sense this sometimes when you actually get further into the collaboration as well, where you're like in it a
Yeah.
little bit and you're like, oh, they're not following through, or oh, they're saying things and
Yeah.
being incongruent. I'm doing more of the work. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
I'm just like taken back. Do you know how many times, and this was ingrained like school projects, right?
yes,
Like how
yes,
many people had
this
a
is
school
true.
project and
Yeah.
someone did all the freaking work? And that's like all you hear growing up
And
is like,
everybody
oh,
got
I
the
hate
A.
school project because someone always does all the work.
Yeah.
So that's like if we go into a collaboration thinking I'm going to be the one doing all the work. And like I think Katie and I, we use a lot of different documentation, but we'll be like, okay, what is Katie? We look at each other's skill sets and we're like, what's Andrea really good at? And what's Katie really good at? So it's not really like, Katie's not going to make, well, we don't make either of each other do
Do
anything, but
anything. Yeah.
we look at what is our skill and what are we good at, and we take responsibility from that place, which does really help. I was just laughing because like I look at like, God, can you remember? I just feel like school projects are the epitome and almost the setup for collaborations to fail. But what
Hmm.
if we went in and we're like, wow, we're all going to do this co-creation, collaboration energy, put in what we know, ask for help wherever we don't know how to do the things, and hire out if we need, like, the podcast. We have help. We're like, I'm not good at editing. I don't want to spend time in front of
Mm-mm.
the computer doing that. No way.
So we hire amazing editor. Yes.
Yes, we hired an amazing editor. That's a collaboration. He's getting paid, but he still collaborates with our vision. And I want to bring up something that I know people would ask about, and that is money, because that's also an area that people really get burned. There's so much shadow around it. We know, clients or associates of ours that are clinicians and have been totally burned by the money aspect. And I think it's because there wasn't this continual time to sit down with the numbers.
Yeah, so I would say that this is like the ugly part, right? Where
Right. And that's what I was
I
like,
mean,
ooh, what's the ugly part? Oh, it's money.
money can be very conducive, right? Obviously, like if the partnership is working and the collaboration is working and the equal partners are like getting what they want from it, right? Time, money, and energy, whatever that is. But on the other aspect, the money, right, can get to almost like somebody can start to almost like they could embezzle the money. They could start taking the money from another partner. They could have sort of an intention that there's not, the intention has shifted, right? It used to be, but then they're making a lot of money. And we've seen this also in partnerships where a partner will take the money from the other partner and kind of like steal it underneath them. And then they're in a lawsuit ultimately
Yeah.
over like who
Yeah.
owns the business. So, I mean, there's definitely, and we're not lawyers, we're not going to give any legal advice here, but there's definitely something to say about setting up structures and systems in, wherever you are in the world with like the legality aspect of it, with contract aspect of it, because and being aware of that, right? Just like being aware of the numbers in the business is also very important if you are collaborating on a business effort versus if you're collaborating something on a podcast and you're going, okay, the podcast is for both of the visibility of the people, then maybe the numbers aren't as important in it. But
Yeah.
I would say this can get into the ugly aspects where people can start to get into conflict, emotional conflict, defensiveness,
Trust.
projections, yeah, lack of trust, right? And and then you're like, ugh, this collaboration is not working for me. I'm going to choose to opt out of it, or I'm going to choose to do something else about it. Now, I will say that the one thing that I find about collaboration, if the collaboration is not working enough for me and it's taking too much of my effort and I'm not like receiving from the collaboration, whether that's me myself or financially or time wise or money wise, whatever it is, it's almost like, why do it? So if you're collaborating with somebody and there's definitely a not syncing of it, or there's maybe even like a hierarchy to it, it may not be the right collaboration for you.
Yeah. And when I think about the money and what we've experienced and what we've witnessed clients and associates experience, the input would be to go in eyes wide open. And someone might say that this is, there's this amount going in and then you get paid this amount. Ask to
Yeah.
see the financials regularly if it's something like that, a partnership or, and not from a place of like defensiveness. It could be like, I want to see the financials so that I can just get grounded in our numbers. Do we need to be bringing more in? Those types of conversations really help. And going in eyes wide open, not necessarily thinking you're going to automatically get screwed over, but just have like knowing the money, knowing how much is coming in, how much is going out, what's the split, what's the agreement. That can really help. And for Katie and I, we just, we used a lot of honesty and tracking, and it was very easy. And I just know that can be a place that isn't easy. It's kind of ugly. It can be ugly. It doesn't have to be ugly. Like Katie said, we are also not lawyers, so consult a lawyer if you're really getting into like, this is a business we're naming, we're licensing, we're doing all that stuff together.
Yeah.
Katie and I's collaboration is a little bit looser in that way. So I know we're almost at time here. So we would love, love, love. Feel free to share your stories with us, your wins, or seeing more people collaborate. I love seeing people collaborate. We've seen collaborations fall, and that's always unfortunate. And it's sort of like you pick yourself back up and you can keep going.
Yep.
Anything
Absolutely.
else you want to add?
That's it.
Yeah. All right. We love you all so much, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Dreams to Dollars podcast. If you vibe with our content and want to find out how to work with us, check out our show notes for the links.